All right. Welcome, everybody. We're so excited that everybody's joining us tonight for some brain-based wellness. We're all in committed to help people getting healthier in 2020. And tonight's going to be a great webinar. We're just taking a few minutes while everybody joins on. I see people are connecting as we speak. So while we're doing that, I just wanted to explain a few things. First, we know that, among adults over the age of 50, staying mentally sharp now outranks Social Security and physical health as a top priority and concern. And brain-based wellness, especially with Brain Tap, has been something that we've added to our clinic, and we're excited to have it. And I'm still waiting for a few more people to join on because I can see people adding on right now as we speak. So thank you guys for listening tonight. Glad you guys joined us. Just a couple of things before we get started. We're going to answer questions at the end via either email, or you can text that number that we sent you when we text you the information on how to connect, or you can email questions during the webinar or at info@hannanwellness.com, and we'll look at them at the end and we'll answer those questions. The webinar tonight is going to be about 30 minutes long, besides this 5-minute pause to try to let everybody join on. And we'll be doing monthly webinars, generally the last Tuesday of the month at 6:30 p.m. Next month we'll be following, Mardi Gras, so we're going to do it on a Thursday, actually Thursday the 27th. And the topic of next month's webinar is going to be the case against sugar.
Appropriate for after Mardi Gras. And as everybody gets started into Lent, that is also going to be accompanied by a optional 14-day sugar elimination diet starting on Wednesday after Mardi Gras. All right, so let's roll into our brain webinar tonight. Again, we want to say thank you to everybody for being on board. I think people don't realize how important our brains really are. They're critically important to our health. So in all that we do, we also need to consider a brain-based approach. And I think it could be said that processing problems precede conditions. Or another way of saying that is, if stress affects us, stress affects our brain as well as our bodies. And when our brain is stressed, it goes out of balance. And the body always follows and goes out of balance too. And that's not something that we always think about. So if we can work on recovering the processing problems, and we can enhance recovery of those issues, we can see symptoms go away, and the brain can add to all the things that we do in the body to help. So our webinar tonight is going to touch on both brain processing issues and also recovery mechanisms. So as a society, we're experiencing a ton of stress, far greater than any other time in history. And it's putting our health at a far greater risk than most people realize. And that stress is directly correlated to the high-tech, fast-paced life that in the world that we live in. And it also, in addition to that, we're also all subject to additional constant, chronic, low-level stresses, physical, chemical, environmental, emotional, every day. And all of this constant stress creates an excessive overstimulation of the sympathetic nervous system. So you may go back in your science thinking and remember that there's two nervous systems that are, one is called the sympathetic and the other is called the parasympathetic, and those are the autonomic nervous systems. And the sympathetic nervous system is the fight or flight nervous system, and that's the one that goes into motion when we have to run away from something. So it helps us to breathe and opens up our lungs, and it causes our heart rate to beat faster, and it helps cortisol to be pumped so that we can do what we need to do to run away from a tiger. And then the parasympathetic nervous system is more the nervous system at rest. And that is more like digestive health and helps us to do the things that the body needs to do at rest. So generally speaking, stimulating the sympathetic nervous system is not a problem as long as it's just that quick stress and it's over. But the world that we live in today creates this overstimulation of the sympathetic nervous system, and people get stuck there to the point where the brain actually gets stuck there, and then the brain, which influences the body function, creates a situation where we can no longer cope or heal or flourish. I'm looking at a journal article that was published in 2017 in the Frontiers of Human Neuroscience, and the authors in this review article say that 75 to 90% of all human disease is related to activation of the stress nervous system. So in the article, they say that there's large bodies of evidence that indicate stress can activate the inflammatory response in the brain as well as in the body. And what happens when stress activates these systems is our brainwave activity shifts, and it forces the brain and the body to pump out hormones like cortisol and epinephrine. So, you know, a question for all of us is, hey, how is our brain coping and how are we doing? You know, has our body gotten out of homeostasis? Because that's what stress really does to us. If it's prolonged, it causes the balance of the two nervous systems to get out of whack, so to speak, and we lose that homeostasis. And the reality is that we can't escape from the world that we live in, this fast-paced world, but we can learn new mechanisms to deal with the stress of life and prevent it from causing physical and psychological problems. So, Daron, will you explain and show what BrainTap is?
Yes. So we discovered BrainTap at a seminar last summer, and it's kind of a strange little device, but the device is a headset, and the headset has lights in the ears, which is laser lights, and it has LED lights in the visor, and you put the headset on, and you sit back and relax in a comfortable chair. And during the session, the doctor explains the exact science behind it, and Doc's going to explain some of that in just a few minutes, but it's very comfortable and relaxing. And the best way I can explain BrainTap is it's like having a power nap on steroids whenever you feel like it.
So switch us to the next slide. So just a moment more on stress and what it does to the brain. All forms of stress are in reality brain stress. And again, when the stress system or the sympathetic nervous system is stimulated, what happens is that we get an excess of cortisol produced, and it's being produced in the brain and it's being produced throughout the body. And when that happens, it depletes the healthy mood balancing neurotransmitters like serotonin and beta endorphins. And then some of the symptoms that people can see are brain fog, poor memory, poor sleep, poor adaptability, poor health, pain, depression, anxiety, and more. So cortisol is the most powerful hormone in our body, and its job is our survival. So when our body is overproducing cortisol, it basically causes everything else to take second place. So when we're producing a lot of cortisol, our bodies kind of go into these lockdown modes, and the lockdown mode makes our body go, I can't deal with A, B, C, or D because I'm only dealing with surviving, causing this organism to survive. And some of the effects of cortisol are some things that we see happening and growing in our society. So one of the effects is that it causes a loss of insulin sensitivity, which means that our insulin doesn't work in our body like it should. And then it blocks using fat as an energy source. So then it inhibits people from losing weight because the insulin sensitivity has been lost. It also, because of the fact that it doesn't allow us to use fat as an energy source, and our brain is so much fat, it's made of a lot of fat, and it needs fat to function. So then the brain can start cannibalizing itself because it's not able to access the fat stores in the body that it needs. And that can lead to brain shrinking or brain shrinkage over time. Excess cortisol also inhibits calcium absorption, so it actually promotes osteoporosis, and that's a condition that is rising in our society, both amongst males and females today. Another effect of excess cortisol is it causes the adrenals to get tired, and it can cause them to get exhausted. Women have a lower libido or sex drive. People start to develop sleep disturbances. They can get chronic fatigue. Their immune system starts to function suboptimally. They can start to get anxiety and depression. And then all these things can roll into more disease processes like atherosclerosis, cardiovascular disease, high blood pressure, some metabolic conditions like non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and metabolic syndrome and type 2 diabetes. So the situation continues to worsen and gets a little bit more complicated as more of the body systems are affected. But the good news is that we can unload our brains. Yeah, you can move on. If they get overloaded, and if our brain gets overloaded, we can unload it and we can get it rebooted. And that's something that Brain Tap helps us do. Brain Tap helps the body balance the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system, and it stimulates the process of flushing out the excess cortisol and the adrenaline. And that just sounds like, wow, that sounds like that's not possible. It's too good to be true, but it's actually based on science. And the slide that's up right now shows the science behind Brain Tap. There's actual scientific algorithms that show how it works. So like Daron said, it is a combination of light and sound and music and speech. And the strategic mind messaging is the positive messages, and we'll talk about that. In the ears are sounds that are binaural beats and isochronic tones, as well as neuroacoustic harmonics, all based on science. And when these sounds go in our ears, what happens is the brain grabs a hold of the sound as well as the light, and lights go in through our ears and lights go in through our closed eyes. And the brain says, wow, I recognize that. And the algorithms are geared at grabbing hold of the brain in the stress state. And then once the brain grabs a hold of that program, the program will lead the brain into the relaxation states and the brainwave states that are more associated with balancing the body and the nervous systems. So those are the algorithms that we walk through. So You know, we all possess in our body a powerful pharmacy. In that pharmacy is literally our brain. You wouldn't believe, but it's true, that our brain is capable of releasing 30,000 different chemicals, neurochemicals, with really just one thought. So our thoughts influence our brain waves, and our brain waves influence our thoughts. And brain tap is actually a biohack. And a biohack is a way to get around physiology and to do it faster. So it's a technique to shift us out of our stress mode to help our body heal faster. So there's unresourceful states that our brain can get stuck in, and that would be considered the lower frequency states. And it's actually brain waves that cause us to get stuck there. So if we're stuck in this stress mode, it's a place in that frequency where fear, frustration, anxiety, and anger actually are more able to grab a hold of us and operate. And it's when we're in that stuck mode that we just don't think clearly, so we can't really solve problems. We can't communicate with others as well, because our brain is like, I'm in a fight or flight place, I'm in a survival place, and in this place, I can't deal with that situation or your communication and the problem that's been presented. Well, I just don't see a way out. So that's a state where we can get stuck when we're stuck in too much stress. Brain tap helps us get out of that into a more resourceful state where we're calmer no matter what's happening around us. We're more focused. We're able to think more clearly, to solve problems and make better decisions. So circumstances alone don't determine our stress level, but they work along with the way that we think. And an interesting thing that I've seen happen from patients that have been doing brain tap is I've had patients tell me that driving on the expressway used to really cause them problems, and they drove so much easier. And we wouldn't necessarily think that it was an out of the ordinary task to drive on the expressway, but when you think of all the stress that's confronting us today, going 70 miles an hour on this expressway with other cars and large trucks, when your brain is under a stress, can be a real issue for people. And something that other people that often people don't realize is something simple as answering our cell phones is actually stressful. In a 2013 journal article in Hypertension, they talked about when you answer a cell phone call, it increases your systolic blood pressure every time you answer a phone call. And that is, that's important because that's a stress response. So, you know, brain-based wellness is not just about brain tap. It's about doing as many things as we can do. It's not just about thinking positive. It's about engaging in as many holistic patterns for health that are possible. And three things that I might say that should be on the top of their list for brain wellness is, one is avoiding excess sugar. So we're going to tie this into next month's webinar, but type 3 diabetes has a name. We're all familiar with type 2 diabetes, but type 3 diabetes is one of the avenues to Alzheimer's. Now, Alzheimer's is definitely a multifactorial condition, but too much sugar can cause insulin resistance or a loss of insulin sensitivity in the brain, and that can be an avenue to Alzheimer's. So we do want to live a life that's not necessarily free of any type of enjoyment in terms of food, but we don't want to be addicted to high sugar foods. And there are ways to biohack that. where you can enjoy treats, but they don't have to be high sugar treats. That's something we will talk about in the future. Another thing for brain health is every individual on this planet should probably be on omega-3s, and they should be on fish oil unless they're eating wild-caught Alaskan salmon 3 or 4 times a week, specifically wild-caught Alaskan. And the reason is because it's the only salmon that's loaded with 3s, and the 3s come from the fish eating the greens in the Nordic water. Atlantic salmon doesn't count if it's wild. It's often farmed in the wild, which means they feed it corn and soy, so it's loaded with omega-6s, and it's not a great source of omega-3s. So adding a fish oil supplement to your regime where you're getting a good 1,200 milligrams of DHA and EPA every day is very helpful. And you want to use a supplement that is a good pharmaceutical supplement. I have a research article in front of me which says that participants with the highest omega-3 index had a 44% lower risk of cognitive impairment compared with participants with the lowest omega-3 index. And this was in a study that was done in 2016, 720 participants, and they were all a little bit older. They were 68 to 92. But what works for elderly people or the older generation also is important for us. I regularly talk to pregnant women and explain to them, make sure you're taking a good dose of omega-3s because you'll make smart babies' brains if you take your omega-3s. So omega-3s are helpful with a healthy brain. I would also like to say that if you don't know your vitamin D level, you should know it, and we should be working on getting your vitamin D level to around 70 or 75, because lower vitamin D is also associated with long-term risk of dementia and Alzheimer's diseases. So vitamin D is such an easy thing to fix. Brain-based wellness would also include doing things like exercising, relaxation, yoga, and meditation. And meditation is a big one. And I talk to patients about meditating, and a lot of patients tell me that they've tried it and they just can't seem to stay focused, that they get distracted and it doesn't work. Well, that's a clue that there's brainwave issues. So BrainTap really works through a 6-step brain-based wellness program. And I can explain the steps to you quickly, but I want you to realize that Dr. Porter, who's a PhD, is the one that speaks in the majority of the programs. And there's a variety of BrainTap programs, hundreds of them, really. We start many patients on the reduced stress programs, but there's so many different ones, from healthy living to smoking cessation to weight loss to
Improving sports.
Your sports performance, like a lot of different programs. And in each program, Dr. Porter, and the programs are about 20 minutes, give or take 5 minutes, some 22, 23, 24. They all vary a little bit. But he takes us through these 6 steps in every single program. So the first step is disassociation, and that's really just getting out of that unhealthy mental chatter and letting go of the thoughts associated with the daily hassles, you know, and the hectic schedule and paying the bills and taking care of the kids. So he gets us to get out of that that place of stress, to disassociate with it, and to disrupt that pathway as a default pathway in our brain. And then he helps us to get into that relaxation through the algorithms that we've already talked about, and get into more of a tranquility state, more in a daydreaming state. And that's more of an alpha brainwave state. We're going to talk more about that in just a minute. And then the alpha state takes us into a place where we're in the present now. So instead of us thinking about everything that we have to do and that happened to us yesterday and may happen to us today, we're now in the present moment. And that is a great place where alpha brainwaves start, where we can learn and we can change our behavior. And then from that place, he takes us into suggesting new thought patterns. That's the co-creating. And just like from there, we move into step 5. And just like a magnet has a positive and a negative pole, our brains really can default to the positive or the negative. And then he'll take us into step 6, which helps us see ourselves as if we're already there. Darren and I really kind of laugh because as we've been going through Brain Tap, we will say to each other in the middle of the day, things are getting better and better and better in every day in every way. Because that's like one of the things that, of the many things that Dr. Porter says, but it sticks with you. And when I do Brain Tap, I have many times just boom, fall asleep. 10 minutes into, or 3 minutes, 5 minutes into it, by 10 minutes, I'm asleep sound. But it doesn't matter. It's still affecting my brain because of the fact that it's speaking to your unconscious, and the algorithms are still balancing the brain and balancing the body.
And those 6 steps that she just walked you through, I had a patient just a couple of weeks ago. She's a patient that's been practicing meditation for years. And she said in that 15 or 20 minute little brain tap session, she accomplished a level of meditation that she's been trying to accomplish over the last 2 years. So it's a powerful way to get yourself into that meditation. And it's like 2 hours of meditation compressed into just 15 to 20 minutes. And you get the result and the effect of it, which is, like I said earlier, a power nap on steroids.
So of course, like we're always looking for the best technologies to help people. And when Darren and I were at a seminar last August, we got Brain Tap, and we both immediately saw the benefit to our patient population, who are all looking for ways to stay and be healthier. And we love to be able to bring this in. So just to reiterate, like the screen shows you a female with the headset on and the earphones. And again, lights are going in through the eyes and the ears. And then the sound through the ears, and all of what is happening starts to synchronize the brain and get it out of its stuck position. And then it helps to synchronize the body. So it utilizes the lights through the closed eyes because it's stimulating the optic nerve. And the optic nerve is a great place to stimulate because there's a million nerve fibers that go through all of our brain that get the signals from the optic nerve. So it has a great effect on the body. So even as we're, yeah, you can switch it, even as we're resting and receiving, it's working. So something that I wanted to say was the first or the second time I did Brain Tap, I said, you know, I really enjoy this. if he wasn't talking all the time. I said, Daron, can I get it when he's not talking all the time?
That's part of it.
Because I am pretty much a go individual. So this has been helpful to me, because if anybody was beta driven, I was kind of a beta driven individual just from the years of doing what I've done. But I actually enjoy hearing from him now. At the beginning, because I was so stressed, in a stress state, I was like, oh my goodness, it was kind of annoying to me.
I have a lot of patients that tell me that the best way to explain it is that what he does is he starts off the same and ends the same, and in the middle he's giving you positive positive affirmations, and it kind of brings you, it grabs your attention, and then he brings you, kind of lulls you, you get kind of, you tone them out a little bit, you hear voices in the background and sounds and tones, and then he brings you down into this theta state, and it's like amazing, and you almost feel like you're dreaming almost. Yeah. And then you come up out of it, and every single patient that does it comes up out of it and says, wow, that was amazing. I heard that at least 5 times today, at least 5 times.
So we have brainwave frequencies, and we have 4 primary brainwave frequencies: beta, alpha, theta, and delta. And the beta frequency is where most people are kind of stuck. And that is like a normal state of alertness, but it is the mode if you're in the sympathetic drive state or under the influence of sympathetic dominance, you're kind of stuck in beta. And in that state, it's a conscious, attentive mind. So it's like, wow, all systems on. I recognize everything that's happening around me. But it's also the state where fear, anger, frustration, and negative thinking are. And when we're in this state, it's a place that if we've been there too long, it can be hard to get to sleep. And this is the only brainwave state where pain exists. So if we have pain syndromes and pain patterns, it's often because there's kind of a beta stuck position. And in that place, we're not as flexible. So with prolonged stress, we habituate to the stress state, and we become trapped in data. And we come trapped in data. We come trapped in beta, and this sets the stage for not as good of a quality of life, and it sets the stage for physical decline and for disease to take hold. But the good news is our body is amazing, and we can feel great, and we don't have to feel lousy or stressed out. So the alpha mode is the intuitive mode. We kind of switch into the alpha mode when we get in that we're just relaxing to go to sleep. It's kind of a light meditative mode. It's a recharge state. And this is a state that we can get into when we're involved with creative pursuits or potentially prayer. Or if a person meditates, they're working on getting into that alpha state. And then if a person is trained properly long enough, they can move from alpha to theta through meditation, but it takes a long time to train to do that. The theta mode is more the inventive mode, the theta brainwave state. And this is where our brain actually solves problems. It's a recharge state. And I'm sure that many of you have heard stories of great inventors who had a problem that they couldn't solve, and they would pose that problem to their brain, and then they'd go to sleep, and they'd wake up with a solution. And not yet. And when our body goes through the alpha and the theta brainwave states, the brain actually stores and categorizes and organizes the day's activities so that the things that are meaningful and useful, they're systematically encoded and organized into our subconscious for future use. So our body depends on alpha and theta to do that. And that means that when we're stuck in beta, we don't learn or remember well. So if a person's brain is stuck in the beta mode, it's harder to learn. And then the final mode is delta, and that's really where our deep sleep exists. It's the place that we really need to reach to rebuild our body and repair and renew our body. So, you know, proper brainwave activity is essential for good health, both mentally and physically. And the brain needs to go through all of these brainwave patterns daily. And it especially needs to allow the alpha and the theta states to work properly. So our brainwave, when you consider our brain waves, there's really not one wave that's superior to another wave that's more important. It's just that the brain wave should be more of a symphony to the body, meaning that the sound of one instrument should not dominate the scene, or one brain wave should not dominate the scene. They all should be part of our normal activity, the way our brain works every day.
So this is what I was explaining just a few minutes ago. You can see in a brain tap session, the way he works the frequencies is he brings you down into that light relaxation. And then after about 10 minutes, you hit that deep relaxation theta mode. And then at the end, he brings you up out of theta and back up through alpha and back into conscious. And it, like I said, it kind of brings you into like a dream state, and it's very relaxing. And then when you get up, it's almost like you drank 2 cups of caffeine.
You do feel recharged, but without the effect of caffeine. So brain tap isn't just about, and we can go to the next slide, it's not just about positive mind messages. It's about the algorithms that we talked about that actually affect our neurochemistry. So we're all familiar with different neurochemicals, and you hear about serotonin and norepinephrine. And I just want to give you some of the symptoms of low norepinephrine. Low norepinephrine would be like low energy, depressed mood, poor concentration and attention, increased appetite, weight gain, pain, and droopy eyes or a stuffy nose. And then low serotonin, anxiety, worry, fretfulness, panic, phobia, mental obsessions, behavior compulsions, pain, depressed moods, PMS, postmenopause syndrome, sleep cycle disturbances, and GI distress, as well as carbohydrate cravings. So this slide shows that with a session of brain tap, you can see increases of 11% of norepinephrine levels. And this makes people say when they finish, I feel good. I feel really good. And then there can be a 21% increase in serotonin levels and a 25% increase of beta endorphin levels. And beta endorphins are powerful pain suppressors. So you can see how it would work physiologically to help a patient feel a lot better.
They feel happy.
Yeah, happy and good and hopeful. I think when we get stuck in a stress mode, sometimes our hope is stolen, because when we're stuck in a stress mode, we can be doing a lot of things to help us feel better. But if our brain is in lockdown, our body might not be responding. And we know that hope deferred makes the heart sick, or it kind of makes people feel like there's no reason trying. Mm-hmm. because they've been doing a really good job doing everything that they've been doing, and it's not working. And we just always want to encourage people that when you do the right things, eventually it's always going to work. And sometimes it takes longer with some people than others.
I've been working with some clients for years with, with the emotion of weight loss. And we started a few clients on Brain Tap, and they immediately started to lose weight again at a really nice rate, and they feel better, and they just, Brain Taps really helped them over that edge. It's a lot of emotion, and if you don't have any hope that you can make a difference, and now they're doing better with their weight loss. So Brain Taps making a difference with them as well.
So, again, you can see on this slide the positive effects of brain-based wellness, Brain Tap being a nice way to biohack our stress states. It helps eliminate unwanted habits, behaviors, thought patterns, and helps in develop new tracks in the brain to make for positive habits, gets people in a more resourceful states, and imprints positive messages. And the great thing is about Brain Tap, there literally are no side effects of it. The only side effect is that you might fall asleep and have a good nap. And the only contradiction to Brain Tap, or contraindication, is people with photoepilepsy. In photoepilepsy, these people are very sensitive to light, so we can't use the light in their eyes or their ears. But that is a very, very small percentage of people that actually, I think there's one more, that have epilepsy. So just to remind us what we said from the beginning, that we were working to help us understand the importance of removing stress from our brains. We're not going to remove it from our lives, but we're removing it from our brains. And we can do that by biohacking and bringing us into a better balance or homeostasis. Brain Tap will help restore our neurochemistry, balance the hemispheres of our brain, improve our sleep vitality and our immune system. So at Hannan Wellness, we're all about treating the root causes of the body from a whole body standpoint. And as a chiropractor, I moved into getting a master's in nutrition and getting certified with the Institute of Functional Medicine, because I realized that structure is foundational to health, but I knew it wasn't everything. And I know it's very important, but I also know that we have to look at the entire body. And looking at the entire holistic picture helps us to get to the root issues and bring healing to patients. And stress is really far-reaching in its effects. And it's important that we address as many areas as possible: our diets, toxins, sleep, nutritional needs, genetic variances. They're just some of the considerations, but along with what we're addressing with our brain today. So our goal is to provide strategies and services that empower patients and bring freedom to enjoy healthy living. So I just really want to thank you for being on board tonight. We're going to answer some questions, but if people have to leave, we just want you to know we look forward to next month's webinar. Like Daron said at the beginning, it normally will be the last Tuesday of every month that we'll be doing a webinar throughout the year. However, the last Tuesday in February is the 27th. Is Mardi Gras, excuse me. So we're moving it to the 27th, which will be the Thursday night after Mardi Gras. And that webinar will be a case against sugar.
After all that king cake.
We want to say thank you again for being part of the tribe that's getting healthy in 2020. And if you have to go, we understand. But
if you have questions, we can take your questions on info@hannanwellness.com. You can send email, or you could text that number that was texted to you
I,
earlier.
I'm not sure if we could unmute everybody at the same time. So we're trying to use the email info@Hannan Wellness. If you have any questions, we would love to answer them.
So
Go
we'll get
ahead,
started.
Daron.
So will it help you lose weight?
Will Brain Tap help you lose weight? It obviously is part of the picture, and it can help us get out of a stress state where our body has been locked down, like we talked about at the beginning, because excessive cortisol actually causes a loss of insulin sensitivity. So when we're no longer sensitive to our insulin, we don't burn fat, and insulin rises in the body and it locks down our fat. So decreasing insulin helps with fat loss, and decreasing cortisol helps to resensitize our body to insulin. So yes, it can be part of the picture that can help us lose weight.
Excellent. And if you're on medicine for anxiety, can you do Brain Tap?
Absolutely. You absolutely can. And we would tell a patient, just like if I'm working with somebody holistically to help them with their blood pressure, my advice would be do not stop your medication. But these are the symptoms that you're going to notice if you don't need as much medication. And then you go to your doctor and talk to your doctor about reducing your prescription, because many of the medications that block function can't be cold turkey stopped. They need to be reduced. And as the prescription dosage is reduced, then the patient systematically can work on getting off of the medication.
And I'm going to answer this one, but when's the best time to do Brain Tap? Well, I've been watching the patients and the clients over the last few months do it, and I can tell you the best time to do Brain Tap is whenever you have the time to do it, because you don't want to be stressed to come do a Brain Tap session. You want to come in and be blessed. And when people come in, it's like I said, it's kind of like a nice little power nap in the middle of the day. You come in, the first time it's 15 minutes. Most of the sessions are 22 minutes after that. You go into the clinic, you step in after the first session, and you lay down in a chair, you relax, you literally just zen out, and you sit up after that, and you feel like you're ready to take on the day. So a lot of patients have been coming in early in the morning, believe it or not. They look forward to it. They're actually waiting at the door for us to open up. And then there's patients that come on their lunch breaks and coffee breaks, and then later, even later on in the afternoon. But anytime where you can actually take a break and take a few minutes to tap out, and that's what I tell them they're doing. They're tapping out, and they tap out, and they sit up, and they absolutely leave feeling amazing. So anytime's the best time, whatever the best time is for you to do it. And that's it for the questions so far, unless I got another question.
Check once more and make sure we're good.
I don't see any more questions. If Thank you guys.
All right.
One last thing. We do have a heart rate variability test that we're doing complimentary right now. If you come in to do a complimentary Brain Tap session, so it takes a total of 30 minutes, because we want to show you that the brain waves are affected. The heart variability test is the new gold standard for a health test, and it absolutely shows you the change in just a 15-minute session of Brain Tap can have on you. And then we do it again at the end of 10 sessions and show you the proof. And you can see with the heart variability test, you can see measurable results in what Brain Tap's doing with you. And it's really an exciting technology in and of itself. And it's part of our Brain Tap protocol.
Okay, so we stopped doing the complimentary introduction at the end of the year. So I'm glad that you said that, Daron. Yeah. So anybody that's on this call,
can do it.
You just give the code webinar to any desk that, or any phone, any person that would answer the phone, and you can schedule a complimentary brain tap session with the heart rate variability with the code webinar. And Daron, you'll need 15 minutes for the heart rate variability and 20 minutes to do your brain tap, and you'll enjoy it. And so great. So I'm glad you said that, but I need you to use a code because it's not open. It's good. Together we got it. Okay, so again, we just want to say thank you. We love helping people. Our goal is to have a greater impact in 2020 than we've had in any other year up to this point.
The sugar challenge.
So thanks for being on board. And again,
thanks. She do great. Isn't she awesome? Thanks
for being part of the tribe that's getting healthy in 2020. We so appreciate all of you all.
Thank y'all for joining.
Yeah. And good night.
Good night.